Hey, I'm Matt. Thanks for dropping by. Really excited to invite you into my studio today to talk about processing guitar and really any kind of audio with Eurorack modules or modular synths. In my journey, I found myself drawn toward like really weird and increasingly more bizarre guitar pedals to just try and get the sounds that were in my head out into the world. And eventually I stumbled upon a video of somebody playing a modular synth, and it was like, you know, my world just exploded. And I've been really interested in that world ever since. Now, I remember the early days of modular for me were really intimidating. It was kind of scary to look at this big machine that felt like something in a science fiction movie and try and wrap my head around what exactly was going on. So what I hope to do today is, from one guitar player to another, demystify a few of the more interesting parts of modular synthesis. We'll make a patch together, we'll define some basic terms, and help you get your sea legs with what modular even is. There's no way we'll cover even a fraction of the ground we could cover in one video, but hopefully this is enough to get you started on your journey. And if you have thoughts, questions, comments, leave them below in the comments, and maybe this will be a series. There are three main things that really excite me about processing audio signals with modular synths. The first thing is that by definition, modules are kind of meant to be combined and rearranged and patched together. And that leads to a process of exploration that yields a lot of times audio that you didn't expect and that you never could have imagined, simply by the process of kind of wandering through the dark and going, well, what if I plug this thing into that? It's a lot of fun. And that leads us to point number two, which is modulation. Now, as a guitar player, you're probably used to thinking about modulation in terms of effects like chorus or vibrato or maybe even ring modulation. But in the Eurorack world, when we say modulation, we mean changing a parameter over time by means of control voltage. This is a topic that really confused me at first and was hard to wrap my head around. But here's the good news. You actually probably already have a mental framework for control voltage and its expression. Think of an expression pedal, right? That is a musical device that you use to remotely change a parameter on a pedal. You tell the pedal which knob you want it to turn, and you dial in your heel and toe position, and what you are literally doing is receiving control voltage from that pedal, changing a value and sending it back. Well, that is the exact same thing that we're going to do with modular synths. But with modular synthesis, we have moving waveforms, which would kind of be like a little robot foot continually operating an expression pedal in a repeatable way. In other words, it's automated and it happens over time. The third thing is that modular for me just has this way of constantly satisfying my curiosity and keeping me engaged with the music making process. As a guitar player, it's fun to send a signal in and just spend minutes or hours rerouting it and sending it this way and that, and having no idea what's going to come back, but being really pleased with what does. So okay, enough talking, let's go turn some knobs. Okay, first, before we do anything else, let me try and give you a super fast crash course in what modular even is. Modular synthesis is made up by, guess what? Modules. This is a module, this one's called Kermit, and I just kind of wanted to show you what Eurorack modules look like. There's a front panel with some knobs and 1/8 inch jacks typically. And on the back, you'll have a variety of different headers and connections. And the only one you typically need to be concerned with is the power connector right here. Now, Eurorack power can be a little bit intimidating at first, but there's one rule of thumb that you need to keep in mind. And that is that most modules, pretty much all modules, will have the -12 rail marked. You see how on Kermit here, it says red -12. Well, that is because this is what a power header cable looks like in Eurorack land. Most of the time, they're going to have a red stripe on one end of it. If the cable doesn't have some kind of color indicator, don't use it, throw it away. You want to take that red stripe and match it up to the -12 and then just push it on. Come back to that. This is a tiny little Eurorack case. It's just a little guy. Now we measure the width of Eurorack modules with the letters HP. So if you see someone say that something is 10 HP, that means that it's 10 HP wide. An easy way to measure that in your case is to count the screw holes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. We measure the height of modules with the letter U. Most Eurorack modules are 3U tall. More on that in a second when you see the pallet case that I've built. IntelliGel basically has a system of 1U modules that go into a special 1U strip, but more on that in a minute. Your case will need power. Some cases provide power, like this 4M's pod. I would strongly advise you to start with a case that has a built-in power supply. Now, your power supply will have a maximum rating for the 12 volt positive and 12 volt negative rail, as well as the 5 volt rail. This cable has what's called a keyed connection. There's a little groove along the top, and our power headers on the inside of the case have the same groove. Now that makes plugging this module in very easy, but you want to double check, trust but verify. I can see that the -12 marking next to that header lines up with the -12 marking on my power cable. So -12 is connected to -12. Do not reverse the polarity. Most modules have diodes to protect against reverse polarity, but you can really mess up stuff in your case. So pay lots of attention to plugging your modules in the right way. Once power is connected, just grab a couple of screws and connect the module to your case. Fun fact, there are 2 standards of screws in the modular world. M3, which is most cases, and M2.5, which, some cases have M2.5. It's another spec you want to check out on the case that you buy. One of the first silly mistakes I made was ordering a case with M3 threads and a big bag of M2.5 screws, and I had to wait 3 days for new screws to land before I could play with my shiny new Eurorack system. Patch cables are just 1/8 inch tip sleeve cables. And they connect like that. There's not much more to say about those, except buy more than you think you'll need. Now, I mentioned the 1U format a minute ago. 1U modules are made by IntelliGel, Pulp Logic, and increasingly more and more manufacturers are jumping onto this platform because it's super handy. So like these are some IntelliGel 1U modules. This is a 1U to 3U adapter made by Acid Rain that is awesome for taking modules of 4 HP or less and using them up here in the 1U row. So I've got a nearness up here, and it's pretty great. Now, what is this beautiful little system here? What have we got? I wanted to take a shot at designing a small system full of super fun, capable effects that you would have a blast with while getting into Eurorack for the first time, specifically centered around playing guitar and using it as an audio processing station. Let's also use this as an opportunity to discuss modulargrid.net, which is the tool I recommend for planning your Eurorack system, whether it's your first system or your 50th. It's excellent. Let me show you around. Essentially, in Modular Grid, you can create a system, just name it test, and tell it how many rows you want, how many HP wide it's going to be, and whether or not we want a row of 1U tiles. And when we click save, this system will now pop up and it's blank. What we can do is search for modules. Let's do injector. Here is the board brain injector. If I hit the little eye, it'll tell me some things about this module. I can learn about its power draw and its depth and width, all that fun stuff, even its price. I can also hit this plus button and it will put it into my system. Cool. And these are just like Legos. You can pick them up and move them around and they'll snap. And it's a really fun tool for exploring and basically making hypothetical systems, which is a large part of Eurorack. But let me show you the system I built that I think would be a killer first system for processing guitar. One of the great things about Modular Grid is that we can see the power consumption on all three rails. We can see the depth. We can see how much the system would cost at MSRP, but don't worry about that because you can buy a lot of this stuff used and save some money. You can also look at the data sheet, which gives you a quick view of the statistics for every module that you've got in the system. But let me show you around really quick. First module in the system is the board brain injector. Injector is a module that will essentially get the guitar into the Eurorack format and has a variety of tools for making that quick and simple and helping it sound great. Next we have Tromso by Bastel. Among other things, it's an analog sample and hold or track and hold. I use it primarily for like a bit crush effect on audio. Next is the Qubit Data Bender, which is a whole suite of macro and micro effects that essentially explore different playback mechanisms failing. So tape functioning well and failing, CD skipping, bit crushing, every kind of weird, cool audio effect you can think of in terms of space and time manipulation is here on the Data Bender. Next is the Instruo Arbor, which is a granular sampler, and it's super awesome for grabbing material and breaking it into grains all the way up to a few seconds long, all the way down into the microsound territory where you can actually turn tiny grains into a wavetable oscillator. It's really great, really beautiful, and I think that as a guitar player, you will fall in love with this thing. Lastly, in the 3U space, we've got Pamela's new workout, which will serve as our clock, random pulses, rhythm generator, LFOs, modulation, you name it. And also I've got the expander on here for you because it's great for syncing your MIDI pedals. When you come out of this system into delays, a microcosm, whatever, you can send MIDI out from this clock and sync up your pedals to your Eurorack and it'll be in perfect sync. Okay, and last thing real quick, the 1U modules at the top of the case, I'm just gonna go left to right. I've got a Quadrat in here, which is an attenuator, attenuverter, and mixer. It's a really great utility to have around for processing control voltage. When we jump over to the real case here in a minute, you'll notice that there are 2 1/4-inch jacks built in. Well, if you want to do audio in and out in the case in stereo, we need to add another pair of jacks. So I've got a set of line-in jacks, and those connect to the stereo 1U line-in module, which is the second from the right, which is essentially just a preamp. Then lastly, I've got a stereo out 1U, and that routes internally to the 1/4-inch jacks that are built into the case. So essentially, to get audio out of the case, if you're not going out of the injector, you just plug a stereo pair into the left and right 1/8-inch jacks on the stereo out 1U module, and they'll come out of the 1/4-inch jacks on the case. So enough of looking at this system, let's plug in and play with it and see how it sounds. Let's start by recording some material into the Instruo Arbor. I'm going to sample some notes into it. Okay, so it's got some material in its buffer now, and this little LED shows us where we're at. I can change the length of the grains and then scrub through them. It plays some forward, some backward. We can even do some pitch stuff. What would be really great is if we could make this happen automatically, and we can. Remember at the beginning of this video when I likened control voltage to an expression pedal being operated by a robotic foot? That's what you're seeing right now. Control voltage in the form of a triangle wave is modulating Arbor's scan parameter, which results in the module scrubbing through the buffer on its own instead of me having to turn the big knob. We can add a little overdub layer if we want to. I'm gonna put the guitar down and we'll use this as our bass sound to mess with. I'm gonna also modulate the length. Super cool. And now, I'm gonna switch things up so that we're actually going from the Arbor into Data Bender. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit of what that case sounds like. You can get into some really fun territory. And if we turn down the wet dry here, pick the guitar back up, keep playing. And hey, while we're jamming out here in the background, let's use this as an opportunity to check the mail. Thank you to Instagram friends for dropping some questions about modular and guitar. Let's jump in here. Zach Reynolds wants to know, best first purchase to get started, other than a guitar. Of course, yes, you will need a guitar. I would suggest buying stuff in this order. 1, a good powered case. I'm recommending the IntelliGel one here, but you could also check out the 4M's Pod line. I think Nifty Case has a really affordable case. The Tip Top Mantis case is really affordable and great. Jump on to Perfect Circuit or Detroit Modular or Control, any of those shops, and just kind of browse cases. Let me remind you again to check the depth of the case and the max power on all 3 rails. First module I would recommend you buy is indeed the Board Brain Injector. You could plug your guitar straight into the injector and then come out of the line out into your amp or amp sim. I have a whole review on this module, which I'll link to in this video. It's really, really great. Next, honest to goodness, I would say grab the Data Bender because I think you'll have so much fun playing with that effect module, and I think it goes to places that a lot of effects boxes, like stomp boxes, don't go. I just think it's a hoot. It's a lot of fun. And if you're kind of on the fence about this whole deal, stop there. Get those things, play around with them, go slow. Don't feel like you need to jump in and build a whole system at once and drop $2,000 on this thing before you even really know what you're doing. There's no penalty for taking things slow and judiciously and being really intentional about what you add to your system, one module at a time. Okay, next, we've got a couple of versions, and more people even than these 2 folks asked this question, but basically how do I do this for not $1 million? How to do it cheap? What's the least expensive mini rig to start off that you'd recommend? And this is my rip the Band-Aid moment off for you. Modular is kind of expensive. It can be extremely expensive, and there's really no way around that. I would really recommend that you wait until you've got a pile of money saved up that you feel comfortable spending on modular. This is what kind of scared me and stopped me from getting into modular for a long time until one day I decided I really wanted to go for it, and so I just rounded up any like pedal or guitar or piece of music equipment that I had collected over the past 25 years of being a musician and said, hey, have I played you in the last 6 months or a year? If no, no matter how much I say I love you, to reverb with you. And I sold a big pile of stuff, and that is what became my first Eurorack case. Just to put some numbers out there, I don't know that I would recommend approaching Eurorack if you've got less than $1,500, because I think that you're going to end up cutting some corners that make the experience less than pleasant for you. I know that that's probably tough to hear, but I would rather tell you the truth than give you some BS answer, you know, where I tell you that it can be done on the cheap, because I don't think that's true. I don't think you would have a good time coming at it from that angle. All right, next, Daniel and Lyle kind of both have the same question, which is, what is the benefit of modular over effects pedals? Is it really so different? And when and why would I go modular instead of pedals? Such a good question, and it's kind of a judgment call, but I would say I approach modular instead of pedals when I'm seeking a certain degree of irregularity, randomness, unpredictability in what I'm doing. And modular lends itself to that because look at all of the inputs and outputs on these modules. They're built from the ground up to influence each other, to send control voltage and audio rate signals back and forth in a spirit of experimentation. I would not know how to achieve that kind of influence in the pedal world. So yeah, long way of saying, go modular instead of pedals when you're looking for a certain degree of unpredictability, and also when you're looking for neurotic levels of control, right? We can get so precise with the way that we control these different parameters in the modular world. Okay, one more question. Can it be done live? Yes, absolutely. And what a beautiful segue into the next segment of this video. What I want to do now is show you a bigger system that I've built specifically for processing my guitar. I really like this system. And I want to do this because for me, like, I learned a lot by just watching other people patch from scratch. So we're going to start with nothing and spend 20, 30 minutes building a patch, putting something together that sounds awesome. Come on, let me show you this system. First, we want to build what I call the front end of the patch. We've got a loop coming in here. I've got a looper off screen playing so that I don't have to try and play guitar and talk and patch, but I may pick up the guitar and do that here in a minute. Okay. So we're just passing dry signal right now. The first thing that I'm going to do is actually take this signal and go into a module called Aeolus Seeds, which is a quadraphonic spatializer. And that sounds fancy. But basically it's going to take, you can send it up to 4 inputs. We're just sending it 1 right now. And it's going to spread that out across these 4 outputs in whatever pattern we tell it to. And then I'm sending those 4 into nearness, which is just a mixer. So it's going to take these inputs and shoot them over, you know, by percentage of closeness or nearness, I suppose, to this in this output. I did a very poor job of explaining that, I'm sorry, but you have ears, so you can just listen. All right, so there's our left. Here's our right. And when we turn up the depth, whoa, kind of sounds like a cool tremolo, doesn't it? Well, when I slow this down and change over to this granular mode, check that out. Turn the depth all the way up. Okay, it has like a smooth. So like already we've created something that I personally find way more interesting and cool. Let's be done. Just kidding. Actually, what I want to do first is, so did you know that with a track and hold, which is an analog module or process, you can create something very close to bit crushing. We'll come back to this, but I want to have that option here in a little bit. Okay, excellent. I'm going to turn the depth down to about halfway. The fun part about modular is modulation, right? So let's first modulate this depth parameter. Right now it's at 50%. We're going to take an LFO out of Batumi, and let's take this random waveform and plug it into the depth input. So now this voltage, which you can see it's +5 when it's when the LED's on, and it's -5 when it's off, is virtually turning the depth knob. So we go from like no effect there to a lot of effect right there. Super cool, right? I'm gonna change this pattern up a little bit. Yeah, that's fun. And the other thing, let's go ahead and do, is Injector, beautiful module that it is, has an envelope follower. We're going to use the inverted envelope to do that bit crushing thing. So the harder the guitar plays, the more of the bit crushing effect will come through. Okay, this is sounding really cool. Let's do what we do as guitar players and throw a bunch of delay on it. This is Mimeophone. It's a digital delay made by Make Noise, one of my absolute favorite companies in the game. Hey, that sounds nice, doesn't it? So got a delay, reverb going. One of the fun things we can do with this module is hit the skew button, and now we can give the left and right delay channels different time. Yeah, that's nice, isn't it? I'm going to offset this depth knob on ALS Seeds just a little in favor of doing stuff. Then I'm going to take us into a different zone on Mimeophone, which basically just gives us longer delays. The other awesome thing on Injector here is this gate generator. So basically when the signal of the guitar crosses a certain threshold, the gate goes high, and we can use that to do stuff, the technical term. And the stuff I want to do here is this little flip input is going to reverse the delay. So we're going to alternate back and forth between a forward and a reverse delay. It might be cool, it might be dumb, we'll see. Ooh, no, it's cool. Great. All right, so I'm happy with that as the front end of our signal. basically everything we do from this point forward is going to be some form of mangling this original signal. So let's get started. And this is where things get real spaghetti-ish real fast. I'm not going to try and keep this patch clean visually. I'm sorry. So hopefully you can tell what's going on. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, we're going to lose audio for a second while I do this, is we're going to take our left and right signal here that we like, and we're going to run it into a buffered multiple. It's just going to make 4 identical copies of our signal, right? So if I now take this copy and plug it in, you can hear stuff again. But before we plug it in, we're going to go into the qubit synapse here. And what this is it's, well, a lot of things, but what we're going to use it as is a mixer and a switch. So you see how these LEDs match up right now? This input is going to this output. All right, so if I plug this in and go back to our output, you can hear it again. Let's take our right and go into this purple yellow one and come out. So cool, so right now you can hear what we built earlier, the front end of our signal. But if I were to hit this scatter button, well, now you can't hear anything. Well, you can hear something in the right channel, but not in the left, because it switched which inputs are routed to which outputs. See if we can find where we were. Just do that so you can hear. Now what we're going to do is just start taking copies of our signal and throwing them into different effects modules, and then routing them back into the synapse. We're going to fill the synapse. We're going to fill up all of these inputs and then switch between them, and you're going to love it. First, the qubit data bender. Is excellent. Soon you shall see why. Okay, one thing I failed to mention about the synapse is, you see how these are changing colors? That's because I have an internal LFO on this module cross-fading between A and B on each channel. So I'm gonna plug this in. Here you got a little something fading in there. Turn its mix all the way up. Yeah, did you hear that? Okay, cool. So now we have this kind of fun tape machine thing. So this little guy right here emulates tape effects. This one does like CD skipping and cool digital artifacts. And this one gives us a little bit of noise and grit. All right. Hopefully you're hearing that and you like it, and you can tell that it's like one more layer of interest. And what keeps it from being overwhelming is that the synapse is constantly crossfading between all of these signals. It's only letting us hear 2 of them. So I sometimes think of this process as like a wiretap on a phone, right? There are so many conversations, or there will be, going on in this system, but the synapse lets us just tap into 2 of them so that we're not overwhelmed. It's a creepy metaphor, but I don't know. That's what I got. All right, onward and into my favorite module of all time, the Harvestman Time Safari Mark II. This is a looper and digital delay. And I'm gonna go into a couple of the inputs that we cannot currently hear. And let's see if we can switch over and assign those. Yeah, we want that one and this one. All right, cool. Time Safari is a super low bitrate, crunchy digital delay. You can change the sample rate. Things get awesome really fast. But while the buffer fills, I will tell you the other thing we can do with this module is kind of let it fill the buffer and then turn recording off, but ping it every now and then to start recording. And do you know what we're gonna ping it with? Another copy of the gate signal. Actually, you know what? 1 second here. We know it's this one. We know we like that gate signal. Let's just go ahead and make a copy of it to use in a lot of different places. So we're gonna run that copy back to the flip input, and then let's snag us another copy to make the Time Safari record when that light's on. It's recording. Other fun thing we can do with Time Safari is we're going to take this random pulse, turn its speed down just a little bit, and we can change the pitch of the recording. That's pretty cool, isn't it? It may get annoying though, happening that frequently. So that might be the wrong pulse to throw at it. Or what we can do is send this into a VCA, which you can just think of for now as an on-off switch, because that's what we're gonna make out of it. We're gonna take a square wave LFO, and what we're telling this VCA to do is only let those pulses through when this voltage is high. So that's another fun and interesting sound that we've got going on. We've got room for 2 more. So let's use the Morphogene. I haven't done TLA mode in a while, so hopefully this goes well for me. Yeah, you hear that lower octave? It's kind of faint right now. But this is like a tape machine that's grabbing a copy of our signal and playing it back at the speed that we ask it to. And we're gonna chop up the slices really small. Good. Just leave that there for now. We'll probably come back to it. And then the last thing I want to try is sending a copy into the ER301, and we'll go out. Into here. Cool. So basically that's another little slice player that is playing back reverse stuff at 2x. Okay, now for the fun part. So remember that scatter input. Now what we want to do is grab one more pulse. I'm going to grab, who will my pulse be? Kind of want another copy of this, so bear with me while I make a copy of a copy. Okay. So now when I hit this scatter input, what we should hear is our stereo field jumping back and forth between all of this stuff. Oh, see, this is the fun of modular. Just sitting there realizing that it's not working and then looking and seeing that I've plugged it backwards. Ha! There we go. Okay, so we've got this patch at a good stopping point for now. We could keep adding control voltage till the cows come home. But I think what I want to show you is I'm going to plug my guitar back in and turn this loop off and like play guitar. So I like this patch. We've landed in this really cool, sputtery, glitchy territory that I personally gravitate toward. And that's kind of the point here, is we didn't have a plan. We had kind of a loose idea going into this patch, but honestly stumbled into a lot of this territory. And as I've said throughout this video, that is most of the fun for me, is kind of patching this to that and going, I wonder what's gonna happen. And, you know, more power to you when it turns out to be cool, which is not always the case. Okay, thanks for stopping by. Those are kind of my initial thoughts for guitar players who are thinking about getting into modular. If you have a question or if there's something I didn't cover, please leave it in the comments and I'll make sure to get back to you. And again, thanks for stopping by. We'll see you next time.